Sounds good.
You want to go public?
Yeah, go public and I'll start. Hi, officially welcome to our second panel as a group, Black Youth for York Region. I'm Vanessa Stobie, and thank you for joining us today. Just starting off, I'd like to say that we welcome you to the first anti-Black and anti-Indigenous racism panel on education, and predominantly education in York Region. I would like to officially welcome our moderator again for a second time with us, Josie Rose. She is an incredible social worker, she's an advocate, and there's actually nothing that Josie doesn't do. She is wonderful, and she's been a professor also. So here, with no further ado, I welcome Josie Rose.
Thank you, Vanessa. So on behalf of the youth of Black Youth York Region, Vanessa Stobie, we just met, Jacqueline Long, and John Aston, I would like to welcome everyone in attendance today, and also those that are streaming live on our YouTube channel. So I would especially like to welcome for dignitaries, Chief Donna Nicotinu from Georgina Island, Mayor Quirk from Georgina, and MP Paulina Jabzek, and Councillor Waterton from Ward 1 in Georgina. I'd also like to welcome other dignitaries that are streaming in right now, and also the youth of Georgina Island. But before we move on, I would like to acknowledge the land that we stand on. It's so hard to talk through this. We would like to begin today's meeting by acknowledging that the town of Georgina and other residents of your region also are located. All of our lands originally used and occupied by the first peoples of the Williams Treaty, First Nations, and other Indigenous people, and thank them for sharing this land. We would also like to acknowledge the Chippewas of Georgina Island, First Nations of our close neighbor and friend, and one that we strive to build a cooperative and respectful relationship with. And as settlers, we are grateful for the opportunity to meet here, and we thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. Long before today, we have gathered here, and there have been original peoples who have been with the stewards of this place, and that's settlers. This recognition of the contributions and historic importance of Indigenous peoples must also be clearly and overtly connected to our collective commitments to make the promise and the challenge of the truth and reconciliation real in our communities. There continues to be a gross indignities and inhumanely unjust acts of oppression. I'm talking about the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls across Canada, environmental degradation due to resource development policies, and the need for major public investments in Indigenous education, healthcare, social services, water infrastructure, and housing. I'm talking about Breonna Taylor and other Indigenous, Black, and brown peoples who continue to pay heavy existential costs due to the systematic belief that their bodies are valueless, expendable, and insignificant. I'm talking about the infrastructures of our identities as we conform to different colonialized and racist spaces. And I'm talking about the histories of enslavement along with the current realities of modern slavery. We too acknowledge the extent trauma often trivialized as historical. We acknowledge the innumerable apologies that the fact that the 94 calls to action outlined in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission still have not yet been fulfilled. We acknowledge that we have a lot of work to do to address the legacy of residential schools and advance the progression of Canadian reconciliation. Today, we are here to discuss, reflect, and connect, and demonstrate solidarity that we can move forward as we acknowledge the work that we must do to move ahead. So thank you everybody for being here. So I would like to pass the mic, clean it up first, to Mayor Quirk to say a few words as we're in Georgina.
Thank you, and I
was quite happy to be able to attend today, and Councillor Waddington as well was able to attend. So, and this is important for us to have these types of dialogues and discussions. The future is the youth, so we need to hear from the youth and learn from them and work with them, and not just say we're going to work with them. We really have to work with the youth to bring forward their ideas and concerns and to see real change happen. So I'm hoping that this will give me some ideas, because I don't know what some of the issues are. I'll be quite honest on that. And I think we need to hear what the youth are wanting to say today and in the future. We do have our Equity and Diversity Committee that I'm hoping that this group will be able to make a presentation to. Everything's virtual and the Zoom meetings now, but that meeting's coming up in mid to late September, so hopefully we'll be able to get you guys on to that meeting and be able to hear. That committee is quite anxious to move ahead with a lot of the anti-black racism issues, the Indigenous issues, so they're wanting to hear from you, so I'm sure they'll be quite interested. And I'm glad you're recording this as well, because it will give us an opportunity to give them that ahead of time, and to promote it to other people that also want to hear what you have to say and your concerns. So thank you for the invitation. Thank you, Kendra, for reaching out to me. I really appreciate it, and I'll let you go on with the rest of your afternoon.
So let's begin our event, but I also wanted to, I think her name was Airwood, was also a representative here on behalf of Betty Big-Canoe, Donna Big-Canoe, the chief. So again, thank you for being in attendance. So thank you. So let us begin our event. So I just want to remind people that you can do leave questions in the chat room on our YouTube channel, and since Vanessa will be monitoring those questions, and then we'll relay them back to me. And also, if anybody in the room, if you have any questions at the end, you can bring them forward at the end. So I do want to introduce these 6 amazing youth that are sitting up here. The reason that we did one on July 28th, just as a follow-up to our Markham Solidarity Walk. And Sydney, who you'll be meeting soon, wanted to do something in Markham, but they wanted to continue the work that they did. So we had an event on July 28th, which was a panel discussion with the youth. And one of the things that came out of it is that the school system, the school teachers, allies from the schools, wanted to know what they can do better to help dismantle anti-black racism and anti-Indigenous issues within the school board. So that's why we're doing this today. So I just want to introduce you to these 6 youth. So first I'm going to start with Sydney Baxter. She's a 17-year-old grade 12 student from Markham District High School. She recently organized a Black Lives Matter protest in the city of Markham and continues to advocate for Black youth in her community. She is currently working with the city of Markham and the Airwood Region District School Board to create a space for Black youth to share their voices. So welcome, Sydney. Then we have Rachel Chen, is going to be a grade 10 student next year and is 15 years old. She enjoys reading, writing, and performing spoken word poetry. Thank you. And then we have Cameron Davis. He's the creator behind the Cameron D YouTube page. At 15, he was already made a name for himself as an athlete, content creator, gamer, activist, published author, clothing designer, and the Canadian team is working on making long-lasting change in Canada by empowering youth to use their voices of action. Thank you, Cameron. And then we have Filippo, is a 16-year-old, attends Stephen Lewis Secondary School, and enjoys reading, writing, playing video games, and playing multiple music instruments. Thank you, Cameron. And then we have Sydney Airwood. She's an Indigenous woman from Georgina Island. She's a CYW. She's passionate about her youth as a young person herself, and currently supports youth and families in her community. previously completed her placement at the Native Child and Family Services supporting Indigenous youth in conflict with the law. Thank you, Sydney. And then, last but not least, we have Hannah, Mulligan's Tatum. She's an 18-year-old high school student, graduate. So she's going to, she was a graduate from Marin Heights Secondary School Regional Arts Program. She had led her high school's GSA and will be attending Humber next fall. So again, thank you. And one of our other allies that sits on Black Youth York Region is Liam, and I forgot his last name, but he was instrumental in helping us put a lot of the things together, but unfortunately he was not able to come today. So we're going to get started with our questions. You guys ready?
It's working for me.
So the first one, why have you put anti-Black racism and anti-Indigenous racism together?
I think that we put them together because they're both groups who face oppression are looked at as minorities or less than. It feels powerful for us to be able to stand together up here today, and I hope that our voices are heard a little bit louder when they're together.
I think that Black people and Indigenous people have arguably the most comparable history of oppression and struggle and injustice in our communities. So it's very important for us to have solidarity between the two groups because we should have that understanding of each other.
Anybody else on the panel want to say something? Yeah.
I think these topics are not well touched upon in schools, and we haven't learned much about it in schools, so speaking about it now and speaking about it on a public platform is going to raise awareness for the topic and hopefully help make a change.
Thank you, Kenna and Sydney. So we have seen increased racialized hate crimes in our schools. If comfortable, please share a personal experience with anti-Black or anti-Indigenous racism in your school. What changes do you, as a student, want to see from your teachers, classmates, administration, and school board? Who would want to start?
Alright, so with me, some racialized topics that I've experienced in school personally is being called white or being said that I don't act black enough. And I think it's ironic. I think that it's weird that I'm being called something that I'm not because of the music that I listen to, the way that I walk, the way that I present myself. And I feel like these negative stereotypes against Black people, or specifically Black teens, are causing the world to think that Black people are inferior or act a certain way because of what they see in movies or what they see in TV. And I want them to know that that's not true. And I feel like in order to make sure that stereotype is washed away, we need to educate others in schools and educate others on topics and show Black people in positions of power and positions of success.
I can agree with Cameron for sure. I've definitely been called those things. I've been stripped of my race when I've been presenting myself in a certain way. I feel as if people don't really have experience interacting with Black or other races, and I feel like it's not. Sorry.
So what I would like to say is about not necessarily the students, but about the curriculum itself in the school system. And I feel like we have all these problems with people not knowing other races or Black people because it's not taught in the school system in the first place. So how are they supposed to, know that Black people, we're not inferior, and Indigenous people as well, that we're not inferior at all, and that we actually are on the same level, and we also, make changes, and we also have contributed. So I feel like that's something that's really important that the school system needs to do, and it will help with a lot of other problems.
Yeah.
So in my personal experiences, kind of public school is where I started to stray away from my culture and my true self. I found public school to be the most popular, to be cool, to be what you want to be when you're a kid. So it can kind of shock you, and it shakes you, right? So I remember being so excited to do my first powwow at the school, and I was all excited. I had my aunt braid my hair all up, and I went there, and it was mortifying. It wasn't fun at all. I didn't feel proud. I felt scared. Kids were laughing. Doing it in the moment, it's okay, but afterwards, it's not. There's the mocking, there's the sounds, there's the mocking of our dance movements, there's the mocking of our singing, and the vocabulary used by some of the youth. It's just not okay. It's where are you learning that? In grade 6, my brother was called a wagon burner. So how do you learn that in grade 6? How do you use those words to someone? It's just not right. So then the next thing I had, so I was young, and they asked me to go up and sing O Canada in Ojibwe by myself with the autism spectrum class. I was young, I was scared, I was embarrassed. I had no one up there that was supporting me, none of my people. I wish I had an older Indigenous woman standing alongside me. I felt ashamed. I didn't do my culture justice. I ran off the stage crying. It was traumatizing. So after those events, I kind of started to stray from my culture, and I started to feel lucky that I had bleached blonde hair and tan skin. I looked more like a California kid. They used to say so it was easier to be the California kid than the Indigenous kid in the school system. So to do better, I feel like they need to stop asking us to put on a show. So stop asking us to go and stand up there and perform something directed by you, right? Not by us. Give us opportunities, provide us opportunities where we can feel proud, where we can go up and share what we know, and we can share about our culture and things that make us feel proud. Don't put us up there with something that's directed by you, and we have to do it alone. I wish I had someone standing there with me. It felt a lot like, hey, look at the Indian up there, rather than something that felt empowering for me.
Sorry about that, the nerves kind of tense me up there. But yeah, but I feel like people expect you to fit into the stereotypes. Once you start veering away from that, they strip you of your race because you're not acting like you're black enough, you're not acting, like as Cameron said, you're acting white, but you have to understand that we have our own differences and that we're our own people, you know? Every one of us, we have our different interests, hobbies, and we're capable of multiple things, and I feel like people need to start to understand that.
I know for me, when it comes to anti-black racism in schools, for me it always came from other students, and occasionally teachers, but for teachers it was more about if I spoke up about racism, they would say, oh, well, you don't need to be that aggressive about it. When, you know, we had a guest artist come to our school, and my high school was black, and someone shouted the N-word at him, and I told my teacher, you can't just let that go. You can't ignore something like that. And he said, don't worry about it, like I didn't know what to do. It doesn't make sense, and I know some people might be tilting their head at me right now because of how I look, which is the other thing about what Cameron was saying earlier about being too white. Well, I quite literally look too white for most people to consider me to be a black person, but that's my mama right there. For me, I really, really don't fit into the stereotype of what a black person should be, and it's more about it's more than just my behavior, it's about how I look, and so I get dismissed. That's my experience.
I guess that was true. Okay, I want to add to what the other thing you were saying earlier about how in schools it's like same thing with what you're saying. For Black History Month, they'll round up all the black kids and say, hey, do something. You want to do a little rap for us? You want to do a dance? Like, we're not performers, we're students at your schools. And if you want to do something for Black History Month, please, Google is free. Go educate yourself on black people who have made significant accomplishments. And then you can make a presentation and share it with your students. You don't have to get the one black kid in the back of the class to stand up and tell us all about slavery. That's not what Black History Month is about. And same thing with what Sydney was saying. You shouldn't be telling the
So I'm clearly not Black or Indigenous, but I have seen racism and like little racist jokes around my school. There was this one time that our school experienced like a blackout, like the lights were all off, and then some kid said like, "Oh, where did all the Black kids go?" And that went completely unpunished. No teachers talked about it. We didn't even get a "don't make racist jokes" like kind of talk. That's definitely not okay. And I think that the fact that Black or Indigenous people are not included as much in our textbooks is an act of systemic racism in itself. And I think that a change that the school board and teachers can make is, if only they've heard the Black and Indigenous people's experiences with racism and things like that, they will stop thinking that it's not real, and if they know how much racism really hurts and how much anxiety and mental health problems that racism can cause, I think that could lead to changes in the future.
Thank you, everybody. So a follow-up question to that. You mentioned about seeing teachers do stuff. So how do you think racist teachers, or teachers that express racism in the school system should be dealt with?
I can say something about that. Racist teachers, just like in any other job, should be fired. Why are you going to keep a teacher that could possibly ruin a student's life just because of their race? In any other job, if there's someone being racist, if there's, a hate crime committed, anyone does anything, in any other job, you will be fired for that. So why do teachers get the pass? And literally, they get the pass. They pass them to another school. The same thing with administrators. They don't get to, go off free too. Administrators should not be racist, and if they are racist, they shouldn't be administrators. I feel like it's sort of common sense in a way, where it's like if someone isn't doing their job right, they shouldn't be doing that job. So teachers should not be able to get this slip by, should be able to get, shoot off to the side and be like, oh, one incident, it's okay, no problem, go to another school. That's not gonna help anything. It's just gonna continue the cycle of just destruction. So the racist teachers should not be teachers. That's what I have to say about that.
Anybody else?
So there's no room for racism in a classroom. Being told that you're less than because of your ethnicity, because of your race, that eventually gets drilled into a student's mind, and that it makes them feel like they're not capable of doing what they're clearly capable of doing. I felt that way myself. You wanna fit into the stereotypes, but you're told that you can't do this, you can't do that. You're gonna start not trying to do that. I don't know how to word it, but overall your general mentality starts to change. You start to give up and start to lose hope that you're never going to be able to become that A+ student that you see in your fellow classmates.
So I think that educators play a huge role in shaping the minds of children and youth in the classroom. You have a really powerful job, and it can also be a really scary job if you use it in the wrong way. So the kids look up to the teachers, right? They set the tone for the classroom. And your eyes, especially in a public school setting, you look at them as they know all and they know everything. They make the rules, they mark your tests. You want to be on their good side, right? So if they're setting the tone in the room and they're allowing racism in their classroom, or they're being racist in their classroom, what is that showing all the kids? That's just silencing all of the oppressed groups again within the classroom. They don't want to be that kid that puts up their hand and makes a scene. Do they want to be? I didn't want to be. So there's no room for that in 2020. If you're an educator, there's no room for you in the classroom if you're not going to stand there as an ally, or if you're not going to be dedicated to learning all the history and teaching it in a powerful way. If you're using your power as a teacher in the wrong way, then there's no room for you in the education system.
So with that being said, how do you feel? Do you feel comfortable actually calling out racism in your school? No? Everybody say no? Okay. Which is sad. So the third question is for Sydney E. So what is colonization and post-colonization?
So to me, it's a settler's way of being, right? It's your mentality they had a different way of being when they came here than the Indigenous people, right? So they saw the land as opportunity, a place for real estate, a place to build on. We had a much different connection to the land. We are connected to the land spiritually. The land is our life, our water, our land, the health of it is essential for our future, for our culture. We need that, and we have a great responsibility to protect it. They saw us as uncivilized and in need of their help, and savages commonly referred to us. They didn't want to join us, so they beat us. We were put in residential schools, the 60s scoop, the Indian Act, anything. The more you assimilate, the better off you are in the world. So they stripped us of our families, our native tongue, our beliefs, our values, our culture, our true self. It still goes on to this day, and we still feel the effects of it. Look at the missing and murdered women. Where are our sisters? What happens to their children? We still feel this colonial pain. We still feel it through intergenerational trauma. Our trauma is not history. Our trauma still lives on, and it comes down through each family. Okay?
I had written something about colonialism, but I think it was to the next part of the question.
Alright. Okay. So, thank you, Cindy, for that. As you said, it's, you know, we talk about post-colonialism, colonialism, but it's still going on, right? We see it. I know for me, I had an Indigenous child living with me, and she's taking off her reserve to go to high school, and that was her whole reserve, right? So it's still happening. We talk about the 60 schools, and we talk about residential schools. Residential schools just looks different now. It's just going into strangers' homes now to be able to get an education. So we have to be aware of that it's still happening today. So how has it affected the way Indigenous history and culture is taught in the schools?
So, in history class, what I think is that they're teaching his story, Christopher Columbus, not history, to our youth. And that's not fair. I remember being in elementary school, and that was actually the worst history piece that we had. We had a little bit better in high school, and it was not until college that you actually are able to take a course, and I'm even as an Indigenous person learning boatloads in my college course about it, right? Because it was never taught. You're like, wow, my whole what I thought happened is that the settlers came over and there was just a war and bad things happened to our people and they took over the land. I didn't know that our people wanted to work together with them, that they wanted them here, that they allowed them here, and they made agreements, and they just went off with total disregard for us. So they teach the settlers' point of view in school. They're teaching it not from our point of view. They're leaving out massive gaps in the history. So they're teaching us, I remember learning about how Christopher Columbus came and how he was great and how he formed Canada, right? He's a great man, they say, in school. And our people were uncivilized. We were living like savages and they came in and they helped us, right? So they're teaching us that in schools. That's what I was taught. And they taught us just briefly about residential schools, nothing about the truth of them, about that we went there for better education. It was run by nuns. We were getting connected to God. They never spoke about how some of our people didn't come home, the abuse that some of them endured there, and the ones who came home, that came home stripped entirely. They have no connection to their family anymore. They don't have their tongue. They don't understand their family. Nothing like that. We need to start talking about that, and that needs to start being taught in history. For our young people, it's really important, because then they're just thinking, you know, oh, well, Christopher Columbus came in and helped them. Why are the natives so mad? Right? We're missing big parts in history that children don't even know, and it's not fair. Children should be taught the truth right from the start. Starting at grade school, I think it should be mandatory that they have an Indigenous history and studies class. We need to understand.
So exactly what Cindy was saying is that we do, when history is taught, there's always huge chunks of it left out, and it's not fair to the people who were oppressed throughout history. And I guess the note that I'll use, if I said more, I would be reiterating what she said. The question that I guess I'll pose to any teachers that might be tuning in is, you would not leave concentration camps out of your World War II lesson. Why are you leaving the Indian Act, Jim Crow laws, residential schools, the murdering, the stealing, the trauma? Why are you leaving that out of your lesson about settlement?
Thank you, Sydney, that was great. So why is it important to study Black and Indigenous culture in history? So mostly Black. Why is it important to study that?
So, it's, and like, basically what Cindy said, it's not the entire history to keep out Black Canadian history. When you think of Black history, some people think of Americans, some people think of Africa, and they're forgetting that Black people have been in Canada for hundreds of years too. So we do have a history here, and so there's no reason why they should be leaving out our history. So, you know, this also leads into why students, you know, might not be as accepted as Black people, because in their classes, they learn about how great, you know, Orville Rutherford is, or Christopher Columbus. They never hear about a Black scientist. You never hear about a Black musician, unless they're a rapper of some sort. You never hear about a Black person who makes literature. Like, that's something that students need to hear from elementary school, from kindergarten, from day one. They need to hear about this.
They said everything.
Yeah, I think it's all about perspective, and the perspective that we're seeing now that's missing the point of view of Black Canadians and Indigenous peoples are, we're not getting it wrong. It's the people who have said the stories, who are leading out these chunks who have made the mistakes and have to reconcile for their actions.
I think by teaching Black and Indigenous history in schools, you are normalizing our existence, which is a very strange thing for me to say, because like obviously we exist, but it doesn't feel that way sometimes with the way that things are taught and we're left out of things. So it normalizes our creation, our intelligence, our power as people, because we're everywhere in history.
Not talking about our history, we were kings and queens before we came here, right? And a lot of the Europeans got a lot of the stuff that you see here today is from Africa, right? Is from learning from the Black community, learning from the Black culture, and that's not taught. And it's good for our kids to be able to hear that, of what they have accomplished. So why is it important to have representation in public education? This is for everybody on the panel.
I think the importance of representation is seeing Black and Indigenous people in areas of success, and seeing that a young Black kid, or me, or Gala, or Sydney, we could see someone in a position of power, and we could strive to reach that goal. And I think that representation in schools and showing that we can be scientists, we can be doctors, we can be lawyers, we can be judges, we can be politicians, is very important in inspiring and motivating the Black youth and Indigenous youth today.
And another thing about just introducing Black and Indigenous people into the classroom, it's not about the race, it's about what they've done. You shouldn't be bringing in, you know, talking about a Black scientist emphasizing they're Black. Oh yeah, they did science stuff too, but they're Black. This is the Black person we're learning about today. It should be about their accomplishments, not their race. And what we're saying isn't, you know, cut out all white people, only people of color in classrooms. We're not saying that. We're saying we need an equal representation of our people and everyone else, actually. So we want kids to learn about, you know, themselves in books. Like something as simple as an illustrated book with a Black girl in it as the main character. You don't have to say we're reading about the Black girl today to the kids. You can just say we're reading a story, you know, in your science classes. You don't have to say we're learning about the Black scientist today. You could be saying, today we're learning about the man who invented the cell phone. And everyone's gonna be like, oh my gosh, a cell phone. And it happens to be a Black man. And they'll see that and they'll be like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that before. Even in, like you said, in like social studies or in whatever class you learn about Christopher Columbus. I would much settlers, they treated them well, like they helped them. I don't want to be learning about how great Mary Sue is. I don't want to be learning about Christopher Columbus. I really don't want to learn about people who committed genocide. That's not something I want to learn about. That's not something children should be learning about. So that is my opinion on that. Anyone else?
Just gonna remind me.
A question of all of them. But yeah, when we're talking about dismantling anti-Black racism and anti-Indigenous, this is what we're talking about. Learning about these kinds of things, learning about our history is going to help dismantle anti-Black racism and anti-Indigenous in our children from a young age and being able to carry that forward. And it would also make these Black youth feel good about themselves, learn about their histories, to say that, oh, we actually did stuff instead of caring about we're being targeted all the time and saying that we're less than. So, Sydney, this is for you. As an Indigenous youth, do you feel that there's adequate outlets for public education and higher education?
So I spoke to some of the youth on the reserve, and one of the biggest challenges they said was we live on an island, right? So crossing over in the seasons that are difficult to be able to get to their public education is sometimes a really big challenge in the mornings. They have to get up, a heck of a lot earlier than any other kid to jump on the ferry, come across. They're sitting at the school long before classes even start. They're tired by the time classes start. So that's one thing that they said is a big struggle for them. The second one is that they end up missing a lot of school in the winter months when they can't get across. And some of them don't have the luxury of feeling safe boarding somewhere. Some of them do, some of them don't. So they end up missing school, and then they end up being scared to go back to school because the countless amounts of times that they've missed a few classes, they go back to school and it's a big thing. You're way behind, you missed this and this and this. Your reason is not valid. You couldn't get to school? Why couldn't you get to school? You couldn't get up? You're tired? Why are you tired? I ask that you empathize with our youth that are in school, that are coming across, and that you take in consideration how hard it is sometimes to get there and to learn. It's not that they don't want to learn, it's that it's a challenge to get there to public education. So what can we do for them in that sense? Can we do some online support? Is there times when they can't get across that the teachers can help them online? They can do it from their house? Can we do anything like that? In an ideal world, a lot of us would love to have our children schooled on the reserve all the way through, but then what's that doing to us too? Then we're staying there and we're stuck there, and that's where we hide out. We don't get to civilize and come together with everyone. It's not really fair either. So also for our schools, they start off in from JK to grade 5 on the reserve. So the class numbers are small, it's very intimate. They do Mother Earth mentorship programs, they learn off the land. So it's actually shocking when they go to Morning Glory in grade 6. The classes are huge. There's no one that you know too much anymore. You're not in the class with your cousins, your friends, your family members are not in the role of taking care of you. It's scary. So they have transition liaisons that help us transition through, but public education can be intimidating for our people. Think of what used to happen to us when we went to education for a higher purpose, to assimilate, right? So for last, when I'm thinking about post-secondary education, we are pretty lucky. We have our own education self-governance, ADS. But what we're looking at right now, we can send our Indigenous people to school as their status. I'm sitting here right now. Do any of you think I'm status? I should be, but I'm not. My schooling wasn't funded, but I went through. I think that it would be amazing if we can get funding for our First Nations people that aren't status, because that status card actually can be kind of painful for us now. I feel like I'm less than because I don't have it. But I'm the same blood as a lot of people that do have it, but I don't have it. It's challenging. I've always been a part of my community, right? So I feel separated in a sense, that I'm not enough. I'm not Native enough. I don't know enough. Things like that. So I think that the outlets, there could be some work there. There's things that can still be done, but we are moving forward in many ways. We do have transitions, we have some supports. There is a need for more.
Does anybody have any else to add to that? Okay, well, Brian, I think we already spoke about what's to happen with the Black education. Or does anybody else have anything to add to that point? I think you guys were pretty well with that. Okay, so this question is for you, Rachel. So what does allyship mean to you?
To me, an ally is someone who is always looking for opportunities to educate themselves and learn. So everybody here that is not Black, you are an ally. And also somebody who confronts their own personal biases and prejudice. And an ally is also always looking for opportunities to support a marginalized group. So I think my job in dismantling anti-Black racism is to have those difficult conversations with my Asian family. And of course, we have to realize that white people are not the only people that can be racist, and there's a lot of racism going on within our own communities. So we need to confront those and have those difficult conversations.
Thank you, Rachel. I know we live in Markham, so Markham, we have a lot of racism going on in our schools. And Rachel is going to be a voice for us in her school and within her Asian community for us. So thank you again, Rachel, for that. Okay, so the next question is for the rest of you. So what does allyship look like to you?
I think an ally is someone who's willing to have the uncomfortable conversations with their family members, with their peers, with their teachers, and to make sure that everyone other than them will make sure that first they understand what they're talking about, and then make sure that they're able to teach others and educate others on what they know and on what they should have known a long time ago. They're willing to get their hands dirty and they're willing to listen and learn that.
Yeah, so an ally, I feel like, is someone who recognizes that this current system that we're living in is putting other people at a disadvantage, and you need to recognize that and make changes in your own life and contribute in any way that you can and see fit in order to help our community, help the Indigenous community, and anybody else that you see is being put down by the current system.
Okay, so being an ally to me, it's more than just looking the part. And when I say looking the part, I mean anyone can post Black Lives Matter on Instagram or Snapchat or Facebook or Twitter. That's not difficult. The difficult part is doing what you should do as an ally in real life, everywhere you go. Being an ally in the hallways at school, when you hear something that you know isn't right, that you have to speak up, you have to say something. Even being an ally, you're walking down the street and you see something or you hear something that's not right and you know it's not right, and you know that you posted about Black Lives Matter just the other day on your Facebook story, so if you don't say anything, then that's just being performative. If you don't do anything, then you're just performing, and you're just trying to look the part, you're trying to seem woke in a sense, when in reality, you're not willing to put in the effort to help the people that you say you care about. And that's not being an ally. What is being an ally, though, is exactly what Rachel said. And I think she said it perfectly, so I don't need to paraphrase her. But, yeah, that's basically what I think an ally is.
The only thing I would add to that is that an example would just be with people who use their privilege in a positive manner. Like, it doesn't have to go to this extreme, but the example I'm going to use is if you looked down in the States, there was those white protesters forming a barricade of themselves in between the Black protesters and the police. You don't have to put yourself in that kind of situation, because I know that that's much more extreme, but it's about using your privilege for good, to educate others, to educate the people that maybe don't know or just need that education.
Yeah, so it's not enough to say that you're just not racist. To be an anti-racist is actually doing a lot of this. So Sydney, as an Indigenous youth, we know that the oppression of your community faces is swept away and you're silenced when you speak out. What would you like to see the community and allies do for you?
What I think is most important for us right now is that we're lacking in your region a gathering space for our youth. So we have nothing here for them. You look in Peterborough, they've got the Friendship Center. In Toronto, we've got Native Child and Family Services. You look around York Region, there's nothing. There's no gathering space for us to have when we have people looking for supports for our Indigenous youth. They're reaching out to the island, which is yes where we come from, but is it easy for us to get over there and go seek the supports all the time? Do we have to go over there, or should there be something here? I think there needs to be something here for us. In another way, you can stand together with us right now. The most current event is how we're fighting for our water. We're trying to protect our water right now. It's essential to life for us, especially when we're living over the island. So I live on the East Point. We don't have clean drinking water. So our water's from the lake. We have to boil our water. We're going over constantly to get bottles of water. It's not safe to drink. And now you want to dump sewage in it? It doesn't make any sense. So you can stand with us in that way. You can go on our website on demand and stand with us in support and sign the petitions. I think that would be awesome.
Yeah, this is happening in your region, right? So that's what we have to be aware of. This is your region youth and communities that we're talking about, that where they can't even get water to drink. So that's kind of sad to say. And again, when you're talking about not having a space for youth, for Indigenous youth, or even Black youth, I don't think we even have a space for that as well, right? So we're always trying to find ways to get youth together. So this is one of the reasons why we're having these kind of panels, so they can have a voice. So yeah, your region has to do a little bit better when it comes to that, providing the space and for both Indigenous and Black youth, or just youth in general, because there really is no space for youth in your region. They have to go to Toronto, because I've spoken to a lot of youth, and they go to Toronto, and that's where they have to go to be able to find space. So your region is starting to lose a lot of your youth. Okay, so how can we show our solidarity and support for the Indigenous community? So this is for you guys. What can you do for the Indigenous youth? What can you do as an ally for the Indigenous youth?
I'll speak on what I know. Writing petitions. Okay, so as I said before, you can listen, learn, and act. That's the best way to be an ally. You have to listen to your peers and others who are educated, and then learn from them so you know what to do next. And then you can act. And personally, I believe that any positive action will be positive action. So yes, you can put that post on your Instagram story. That's a way to raise awareness, but you have to do more. And you could write petitions. You could make a YouTube video. You could write an article and spread that to raise awareness, and then also to make sure that others are learning what needs to be heard.
Just listening to the Indigenous youth, like what we're doing right now. I had no idea that your region was planning to dump sewage into people's drinking water. That's something that I just can't believe. Because it's like, how could you do that to a bunch of people who live in your region, and it just doesn't make any sense. So I feel like we just need to listen as much as we can, do whatever we can to spread the word about the issues that are going on, because enough is enough. And the fact that 21st century Canada, there are people who don't have clean drinking water is ridiculous, and that shouldn't be happening. So spreading the word is something that we can definitely do as well.
Yeah, like Cameron and Sydney were saying, it's just about spreading awareness, being active listeners, and learning from it. And as far as awareness goes, when I was preparing for this panel, I was looking for the number of how many missing and murdered Indigenous women that there were. And the first statistic that came out was from 2009, and the number was over 5,000.
school, they either died, they were murdered, right? So, or they committed suicide just because of all the issues that were going on and being teased at school and everything, and no supports. As you said, there's no supports here at all for Indigenous youth, and I had to send information from, I think it was Oshawa, and I had to go to Barrie just to get that kind of information. So there needs to be some, because there's a lot of Indigenous youth living in your region, right, in our schools, and they may not tell you that they're Indigenous, but if you don't give them that space to say that I am Indigenous and that I want to come out and do things, then they're not, right, and they're just going to end up suffering. So does anybody else have anything for that question? No? So the next question, we spoke about, we're talking about schools, but we wanted to talk about the other stakeholders that are involved within the school system. So the next question is about policing in schools. So both for the Black and Indigenous communities have a tense relationship with the police, experiencing difference, and it's different in different neighborhoods. As a Black and or Indigenous youth, how do you feel about the police presence in your schools? Is it necessary? Does it have any benefits? And should it be eliminated? And if it does continue, do you mind the police being in your schools or paying close? Whoever wants to start off.
Start off with that question. So, with the police program that's in our schools, the school resource officers, based off of what I was told, was that they're supposed to talk with the students, have a relationship with them, keep everyone safe, and that is not what I've seen. School resource officers, I've been at high school for 3 years, I have no idea who they are. I don't know what their name is, never talked to them before, never seen them talk to anyone else, definitely never seen them play basketball with the kids or do virtually anything with the students. And all they do is see them sometimes walk by with their bulletproof vest, gun on their side. How is that supposed to make me want to talk to them or make me feel safe? Because as a Black youth, I see constantly the police shooting down people that look like me. To have an officer come into my school in full gear, acting like a riot's about to break out, it doesn't make me feel safe, and I don't think it's quite necessary. Because if they're just going to be there to be a sort of law and order in a school that's meant for education, I just don't understand why they need to be there in the first place, unless there is an actual serious incident going on.
Yeah, exactly what Cindy's saying. I believe that if police officers need to be in the school, one, they're taking the approach the wrong way. The way that they're dressed, and like Cindy said, with the bulletproof vest, and they're always, when I walk into the hall, they're always doing like the leg position against the wall to make them seem more like thug-like. That's not approachable, and especially in a high school where you're supposed to be learning and you're always being aware of your surrounding, what's around you. Trying to break the ice with someone looking like that, and someone who's supposed to help you and make good relations isn't the best.
Since I'm not Indigenous or Black, I will never be able to understand the tension between the two groups or like feel what they feel, but I think that there should maybe be like a balance between the two opinions, which is like, oh, there should be no police in school, and the opinion that what we're doing now is fine. I think that if police officers were really kind to the students and they stopped being so intimidating, and we were really careful with which police officers we choose to be in our schools, and they like seem to genuinely care, and they start playing basketballs with the students, engaging with the students, then I think that police officers in school can be a really wonderful thing, and it could be really helpful. But I just have a question for all of for the Black and Indigenous females, and that is, what would you say to those people that are thinking like, oh, but most police officers are really kind, and they really do want to help and stuff like that. What would you say to those people and things like that?
I just going to say, what I have, people like that is what you have to understand about police officers and their relationships that it's a job for them, right? It's a uniform that they get to take off. And it doesn't matter if they're a good person when they take their uniform off at the end of the day when they go home. They all still benefit from the same system, and that same system is corrupted. So all of us are going to have that kind of mistrust towards it because of what we see, because of what we know about that system and how it views us and how it treats us. And I know that some people might think, oh, but would you feel more comfortable relying on having a resource officer in the school so that field officer, I don't know if the correct term is field officer, but an officer that would be in the school has to come into the school for any reason. You have someone there who knows you. And I do see the benefit of that. My only argument for that is maybe we should be focusing on training field officers to not go into schools armed unless they really, really need to. If there's an active shooter, yes, you need to be armed in that situation because now you're protecting kids. But if the kid has drugs on them, you don't need to be armed in that situation to me. You know? And yeah, basically you just don't need to pull a gun on a non-violent crime, I think is my bottom line. And what I think of it.
So personally, I have seen my school resource officers. I've only seen around 2 of them, and I've only seen them interact with each other or other members of staff. And I believe that having police in schools can be an important piece to normalizing police interactions with students, as you know they are in your community, and you know you're eventually going to have to talk to a police officer to get pulled over or something. And most people, you hear that they're nervous around them, they don't know how to act. Which may lead to like mistakes that can be fatal in some cases. And I think that in order to normalize more police interactions, police officers should be like in the classroom with their teacher, because students trust their teachers. They might enjoy their lessons, or whatever the teacher has to say. And I feel like if a police officer were to walk into your room and just talk to you casually and just say what's up to you, I feel like that would definitely be normalizing having police around you in your presence.
So when I think about having police officers present in school, I think that everyone's experience with police officers is different. So you don't know if there's a youth in there that had his mom or dad ripped away by the police officers and brutally arrested, right? You don't know. The thought of just seeing him just walk past the police officer, that little boy, he could be shaking, right? That could be just really scary for him. So they need to come in with purpose. Maybe don't come in to patrol, don't come in to be a big authority figure and bigger than us. Come in to fit in with us. We have an officer on Live Reserve, and she comes to the school every day, and she plays outside with the kids on the playground. She does the monkey bar, she does everything. They know her by name, they love her. I think that we don't need to try to push the police away. I think that we need to try to bring them closer to us and help them understand us and get a working relationship with them. I think we need a better relationship with the police. So if they come to the schools, come and work on your relationship with the kids. Come and play basketball, come and eat lunch, come and talk. Don't go in the native room for 2 minutes and sit there with your full-on get up and then leave. Just scare us for a couple minutes and then leave. So I think that they should come as the purpose of relationships, and maybe there was a thought about them coming in plain clothes. And that made me think it would be a little intimidating. Is that a teacher or is that a cop? When you're walking through the hall, right? Some kids may feel unsettled that way. The police might even feel unsettled that way because they're not identifiable, right? So what I'm thinking is that why don't you come in like rec clothes? Why don't you come in a sweatsuit that says police on it? You're identifiable, but you don't look intimidating. Then you look like you can play basketball. Maybe the kids won't bite you to because you don't got a big heavy belt on with a gun.
So, what I wanted to also say was that police coming in interacting with students, the question is, which students are they interacting with in which way? They could be interacting with the white students in a completely different way than the Chinese students, then completely different from the black students, completely different from the Indigenous students. So, I feel like if the police are going to be in the schools and interacting with students, they shouldn't just be, walking around, pulling a kid to the side and being like, hey, shirt that says resource officer on it. That's totally fine. People can identify you and you don't look intimidating. And then also coming into the classroom, helping a kid out with their math homework. Like, having a police officer help me with my math homework, that sounds like pretty interesting to me. Doesn't sound scary. And on top of that, also with what Sydney was saying about having purpose, why can't these officers be called in to, help out with different clubs? Being like, today the art club needs help putting away paint. Can you come in and, help them do that? Or we're having, a school rally coming up. Can you, help us paint this? Can you help us move the chairs? Can you play a game with the students? Help coach this team for a day? That sort of thing. That's a much better plan than just having someone stand on a wall and stare at you with a bulletproof vest. And it's also a better plan than just picking random students who you want to interact with and when. So this way, they'll have to interact with students from a variety of different clubs, variety of different students in those clubs, and they'll also be, not intimidating while wearing normal clothes, but not exactly plain in disguise clothes. So there is a middle ground with this, and I think that if we can reach that middle ground by also having student input, like this panel, having the police directly talk to us, not talk to each other, that will be much easier for us to interact with police in schools.
All right, thank you guys, that was great. So as youth, how do you feel about reopening of the schools? I think that's the biggest topic right now for you and also your parents. I think there's a lot of stress going on. So whoever wants to go first.
I'm just going to speak to our Indigenous youth going back to school that are from the reserve. Right now we have 0 cases of COVID on the island. So when our youth are going over and they're going to school in the public schools, it can be scary. It can be scary for the youth. It can be scary for the families. We have valued community members over there. We have elders. We have a community that we need to keep safe. So it can be, I think it's a little intimidating right now, the thought of sending our kids. Do we send them or do we not?
I think my take on COVID and back to school is that it's going to disproportionately affect marginalized groups because we are disproportionately affected by poverty, and then you get parents that have to go to work and have to send their kids to school and they don't get a choice because the decision then is, do I feed my kid and send them to school and risk them getting this deadly virus that could kill them or me? Or do I keep my kid home and then we don't have food not because I can't go to work because I have to watch my kid? That's probably more for parents with young children rather than high schoolers. And then it doesn't help when you have superintendents or just people on the board and the school boards that are saying things like, oh, well, we can't enforce masks in schools. Let me tell you something. If you can enforce a dress code, if you can tell me, a female student, to cover my shoulders on a 30-degree day, you can tell the kid in the back of the class who doesn't want to put his mask on to put his mask on.
If there's anything that you could change about the plan, what would it be?
Oh, okay, I will. So, personally, I really dislike the plan that YRDSB put out. Personally, this plan makes 0 sense. How are you going to send kids to school for 1 class, 1 period, and send them back home, and then get them to go online? Because for me, I would have to bus to school on public transit. That's 1 point of contact. School, that's the 2nd point of contact. Going home back on the bus, 3rd point of contact. That doesn't sound pretty safe to me. If I'm only going to school for an hour at that, to be in contact with so many different people. Second, my issue is with how they did the semesters, especially for high school. When I was looking at the TDSV plan compared to the YRDSV plan, I thought the TDSV plan thought more about their students and the students' mental health. 4 classes in one semester, 3 of them online, 1 of them in person. That sounds like a lot to me. And it was a lot going through April through June with that. So I felt like they really missed with their plan. They did not involve their students, which was a terrible idea. You should have involved your students with, their choice of going back to school. It's the students in school, not the parents. And also, with the teachers, I really feel for the teachers because I know teachers whose families might be compromised. They themselves might be compromised. And to think to myself that this teacher that I love so much has to go in with little, to no protection, realistically, a mask at a room full of 15 kids, 30 kids sometimes? How is that supposed to help them? How are they supposed to teach? I would be extremely stressed out if I was that teacher. So, in total, I think they could have done a way better job. Personally, I like the TDSB plan way better because at least they're thinking of their students somewhat. No plan that I've seen has been put in place that's completely safe, which is problem number 1. But problem number 2 is that you don't even care about your students or your staff. So how are you going to have both of those problems when you could have eliminated one of them easily?
Anybody else? Okay, so this question is for Rachel. Obviously, we know you're not Black or Indigenous, but you're still a minority, right? And I think with COVID, you felt right now that there is a target on Asian, the Asian community, and especially Asian youth. So I just wanted you to just talk a little bit about that, going back to school and having to deal with it.
Thank you. So for what was said earlier, I just quickly want to add to that, and then I'll talk about the other thing. But I totally agree with what Cindy and Hannah said, and especially the plan for elementary school kids. I think that the fact that elementary school kids do not have to wear a mask or social distance on the bus, and the fact that the bus is not very big and the seats are this big, I think that will ruin all the process that we made trying to flatten the curve, because once one of the kids get it, and they're always touching each other, the whole family will probably get it. So I don't think that's a great idea. Also, I can't speak for how Black and Indigenous people feel about the plan, but I can say that COVID-19 in general is affecting Black and Indigenous people way more in comparison to the other groups because of poverty and the lack of health benefits in their jobs. Now, for COVID-19, it's definitely fueling racism towards Asians, and a lot of us for the first time are feeling afraid to walk down the streets and things like that because of all the hate crimes that we've seen on the news and things like that. There are pros and cons to this. The con is obviously that this can cause more stress and fear and add to the already a lot of stress from the school where COVID-19 though in general. But it'll also add to more stress because now we have to deal with a little bit of racism for the first time that we don't know how to deal with yet. And this could also lead to more hate and racism in the Asian community towards Black people because we're more stressed, and that could, lead us to being more racist, which is terrible. But it's also good because it's good to have something to start the conversation with, and for Asians to relate to, and for something to relate to the Black community and the Indigenous community, so that we can start the conversation about racism and just talk. And then with the relating thing, it can really make it less awkward because we know how they feel and things like that.
Thank you so much for that. Okay, so this is our last question. We've been speaking for the last hour about the stuff that is happening happening within the schools. So now I want to just touch base on exactly what are some things that the school system, the education system, individual schools are actually doing well within your communities. And I'm going to ask each of you to speak. So I don't know, we'll start with Sydney. You want to start with Sherry?
So for us, I think that Sutton High School has done a really amazing job for our Indigenous youth, and I think that following in their footsteps would be a really good idea for the rest of the schools. They have a First Nations Study Center in our high school, so they think it's a place where we can gather, we can go in, instead of going to the other rooms. Like there is a room called 335 at my school. It's like the room where you could go to get extra help and do your work right alone. Some students can't work in the big classroom setting. I was kind of one of those students that needed my own space to be quiet and have that. So I had the Native Study Center, and it was amazing. A room filled with our artwork, our people, our vibes. It was awesome. And they're actually making big waves. Erica Kelly and Jody Johnston are doing a lot of great work, and I was speaking with them. So they have an Ojibwe classroom now. We've never had an Ojibwe classroom, just totally dedicated to Ojibwe at Sutton High School. They have about 400 students in the Ojibwe program now, and there's an option actually to opt out of French. So when you're in grade 4, you're allowed to opt out of French and go into and take full-time Ojibwe, which I think is amazing because I can speak next to anything on my language. So I really wish that I have had that option when I was younger, but then again, I did have that option. We had Ojibwe once a week. I wouldn't go though, because I was the one kid that had to get up and walk out of class and go to Ojibwe by myself. So I think it's great that it's growing, our language program, because we really need our language back. They also worked with the island and talked about the skills needed for upcoming jobs for our youth. And for the first, they created the first Indigenous Specialist High Skills major program in the province, where students can gain specialized skills and access to certs and dual credits. And they worked in partnership with Georgian Island doing that. So I think that they're making big steps here at Sutton District High School, and I think that that's a good example to follow in their path. They're doing really good things, and I'm really proud of them.
I was lucky enough to have a high school that had teachers that cared enough to have at least a few things done, like how my English teacher last first semester in grade 12 talked about post-colonialism in English as a lens to analyze literature under, which was so incredible. And my history teacher who talked about the Rwandan genocide, which is a terrible thing that happened, but I wouldn't have known about it otherwise. And how on Remembrance Day, they always made sure to include soldiers that weren't just white people. And yeah.
In my school, something that I really enjoyed was my English class. I had the same English teacher for 2 years, and he focused on teaching about Indigenous literature and Black literature over Shakespeare, which is great. I didn't want to learn Shakespeare anyways. So he taught us not to just look at it as, this is by a Black person, we're going to learn about Black people today. He taught it as literature, as it was. We analyzed it, we looked at it through different lenses. We also watched a movie that was directed and the actors were all Black. And we looked at it through a more artistic lens. And we kind of questioned and we discussed in my class. Take it in, there was only 2 Black people in that class, including me. And we were doing all this stuff about, Black culture and also Indigenous culture, which I thought was amazing. And another thing that isn't necessarily education, but it goes into the question that we were talking about, is how my city of Markham, they have done a lot of work, and I saw that I really appreciate that they put in effort to, put certain policies in place and certain checks in place with regarding to anti-Black racism. One thing that I'm a part of that Mayor Scarpetti decided to create was a Black Youth Liaison Committee. So basically what the point of that is to have 10 Black youth from around Markham, roughly, to come together and work directly with the mayor's office and with people in, the municipal government to talk to them about issues and things that we would like to see, maybe events we would like to plan. So we would have a direct link to them, and we wouldn't have to, always be begging, for someone to listen to us. So I think that was a really good plan. Along with the other things that they did, which was, checking on their policies, giving education to their staff, anti-racism education to their staff, that sort of thing is definitely what's needed.
Yeah. So in my old elementary school, we had a cultural day once a year, and I've never seen this in my life. I've only experienced it a couple times, and I'm very lucky to have experienced it. They basically invited all the parents, the students to come in and set up their own booth in the gym. They all brought their own cultural food, and let me tell you, this is the first time I've ever had matzah and curry on the same plate. It was delicious, but I feel like even those little things are something that just to broaden your horizon, just to say that other cultures have created these things, they're basically recognizing that here in Canada we're very lucky to be here and everything, but other countries have also created and built upon generations and generations of food, architecture, whatever. But I think it's very important to have visual representation, auditory representation of all of our cultures, of all of our differences, and I found that very interesting.
Yeah, well, my school, so last year we did a merged history and English program, so we got to learn about a bit of Black history and Canadian history in an English class, and that was very successful. So this year what we are doing is we're combining English with Indigenous literature. So we're not going to be learning about Macbeth or Shakespeare, we're going to be learning about Indigenous topics and Indigenous books. And it's horrible that it took so long for this to happen, but it's changing. We're finally progressing.
For me, my high school has a personalized land acknowledgement, which I thought was really cool, and I think that it just showed that they were grateful for the land that they were on and the sacrifice that Indigenous people had to make. We also, in my elementary school, we had a bunch of assemblies where we invited a lot of Black and Indigenous guest speakers on different occasions. We had multiple assemblies, but and that was really great. They talked about their culture and they brought in cultural items and things like that. And I thought that was really good, and that was a great way to learn about the different cultures. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so my last question to you guys is, what message would you like to send to the school boards, to teachers, to your MPPs, to your the other students, to the community following this? What steps can they take? What do you want to see? I'm going to start with Rachel.
Something that I want to see. Something that I want to see is you're being engaged and you're taking the steps to actually learn and actually educate yourself on some of the stuff that we talked about here today, but also some of the stuff that you should be taking initiative to learn. And I like we talked before about being a good ally and be really understanding to have it's the importance of having the uncomfortable conversations with your family, with your friends, but also educating yourself and your friends, even if you're not an ally, even if you are Black, or even if you are Indigenous. You have to take those strides as well.
The message that I really hope that the school board and the police and even the dignitaries that were here today that they take away is that when we talk, we would like to be heard, and we would also like to see actions, real actions, not just conversations, not just photo ops. We want change. And the thing is, nowadays, if you don't create that change, we're just going to try to create it ourselves. So it's either you're with us or you're against us. And we will continue having panels like this. We will continue having protests. We will continue fighting for our right to be heard. And if you don't want to take action, then that's on you. So please, 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 listen to what we all said here today. We didn't lie, we didn't make up stories, we told you the hard truth. So, take this truth and just apply it to everything that you do. Apply it to the policies that you make. Apply it to the decisions that you make. Apply it to your boardroom conversations. Because we're here to stay.
I just want to say to our teachers and our school board, today was the first day that I actually heard about the sewage being dumped into lakes and things like that. And I was just wondering, where was that and why didn't I know about this before? And teachers just to take the initiative to teach about these issues and go out of the curriculum to teach us extra things. Because I did not know anything about this, and I had to do a lot of self-educating on these problems. So that's definitely something that I would say to my teachers and school board.
My message would be to the educators is to educate yourself on history and also to be kind and to empathize with some of our youth, and that it is challenging and it is scary, the positions we can be put in sometimes. I think that it's important for our Indigenous youth to see our culture be celebrated, because I know when I was in school, it was a very shameful thing. It was something to hide from, something to pretend you're not. And I just want to send a message to any of the Indigenous youth out there watching, just be so proud of who you are. And it's never too late to go back and take back your culture and speak. This is the first time I'm speaking on a public spectrum today because I've been silenced for so long, right? And, so just be proud of who you are and your culture and be your true self. It's really important.
Yeah, I think that as teachers and parents need to work on expanding their kids' horizons and expanding, telling them that there's more to the world than just our little community, because there's stuff in different countries that I never knew that, in Asian architecture, I was telling everybody earlier, I never knew how sophisticated it was, or how they built everything. I was so surprised, and I feel like this just goes to show that we're stuck to the current curriculum is based off of, I don't know where I'm going with this. But yeah, we need to show our students that there's more to the world.
I think it's important for board members, teachers, the administration to know that, kind of like what Cindy was saying earlier, was that we will keep going and change will happen and progress will be made. What I want from these people on an individual level, this is a moment in history. We had a history teacher at my high school who said things like, "Oh, history starts as of yesterday." This is history happening right now. When you look back at this moment in time in 20 years, are you going to be proud of what you did? Did you do anything? That's what I want.
Alright, thank you so much, you guys. You guys have been amazing. So I want to ask, unfortunately, our feed was not working properly, so we have no questions from the feed, but is there anybody?
There are.
Oh, there are?
Yeah.
I didn't see any. Okay.
I texted to you.
Oh, you didn't. I didn't see it. It's not coming through because I don't know if the thing is. Internet's not working. Okay. So, question 1. What are your thoughts in schools named after individuals who are slave owner holders, such as Bond Secondary School? And there's supplanters of Indigenous nations, Sir A. McDonald.
I actually had a conversation with a couple of my family members about this not that long ago, because they were talking about the statues being torn down in the States and how I thought it was great that they were getting rid of the statues. I don't think you know? People who owned slaves or people who were responsible for taking land from Indigenous people being violent and mistreating them. I think it's okay as far as like, if you want to keep up a historical building, by all means, keep it up. But I don't think we need to name our schools after these people that shouldn't be role models.
Is there any questions in here? I'm just waiting for the phone back. Okay, and so what would make you guys feel safer and included in your communities?
Personally, I feel like having events in our communities, not just, a high school assembly. I mean, like something like, I know in Markham we have jazz festivals on Main Street. Why can't we have a festival that, highlights Black artists? That's something that I feel like it shows the community who we are, and it doesn't have to be something like, rappers or this and that. It could be classical artists, it could be jazz artists, it could be bands, like something just like that in our communities to show people on a bigger scale about just Black excellence. And same thing goes with Indigenous people as well, to have that in their cities, to just have big events that anyone can go to, that you can't miss. That's something that I feel like.
I think, like exactly what Cindy said, raising awareness to the public eye so that people who aren't at the small events will be at the ones that are more visible and can be seen by more people, and that might motivate them to take action and to educate themselves on some of the harder topics that haven't been touched on.
Ask the Black youth here, do you know that there's actually powwows that are going on here in Georgina during the summer times? No? So you've never been taught about that, right? So they are powwows and things going on. I've been to some of them, and that's one of the things that I think you guys are saying is that if there are cultural events going on, they need to be advertised, and then it'd be nice to see different people out there attending these events. So the third question, so what do you think other youth can do to help disrupt anti-Black racism and anti-Indigenous racism in their communities? You kind of answered this before, but
I think, so you're asking about what other youth can do to help support? So I think, don't laugh at us, don't make fun of us, don't mock. When we get up there and we do these things and we show you and we're teaching you about us, don't laugh at us, celebrate us, make it feel like it's cool to be the Indigenous kids, and then we're going to come out and then we're going to talk. Because when we're silent, then we just want to be just like you because we're scared. So let us come out, let us be celebrated.
I think it's important to, if the conversation arises in a classroom setting about racism, listen, be attentive, just like anybody else would. Because I have this distinct memory of being in a classroom, discussing something that happened with racism, and seeing this guy that I considered my friend with his headphones in. And it was so insulting, and it hurt so much to know that someone that I considered a friend, someone that I cared about, didn't care about me and what my community was going through. So it's important to listen and to advocate and to have those conversations.
Yep.
And also, small things do count. You don't always have to be on a panel, you don't always have to be leading a protest. Small things count, like Hannah said. If that student, if he were to just listen and to tell his friends maybe, this isn't cool, we should be doing that. That's making change. Don't think that you doing something small isn't change and it's not good enough, because every little thing does count. And if anything, find other people who have the same ideas as you. I know that our organization, we're always open to hear anyone's ideas or if anyone wants to create change. That's what we're here for. We're not, a select VIP club where you can't get into. Please help, support the change. We would love that. So please continue with whatever you're doing, whether it's big, whether it's small, just continue trying to do your best to create change.
I just want to add small things count. Just continue to educate yourself, take initiative. I mean, listen to our panel. That is definitely one way of educating yourself. And signing petitions, donating, all that is important and valued.
Like what Cindy said, I think that understanding that if we go to speak and if we are successful, don't undermine that by saying or calling me or others white. Understand and normalize the fact that Black people can be successful and Black youth is successful. So, Black youth are successful. So, understand that even if we get into positions in the school that are high, or even if we get into positions in the school that are successful, understand that we are there for a reason and that don't degrade it.
So the last question is, are there particular ways that we can be supportive of Black and Indigenous youth in smaller towns and in rural areas in your region? So places like probably King City, Bradford, well, no, I guess that's still, East Gilberry. Oh, are there particular ways that you can be supportive for Black and Indigenous youth in small towns and rural areas where there's probably just one Black family in that whole area? What can you do to support them?
My suggestion is going to sound incredibly scary to anybody who does live around Georgina and knows what it's like down here, because I am from around here. You need to learn to be comfortable calling out injustice and racism when you hear it, because it's incredibly common in small towns. And I know that it's scary, but you have the privilege, if you're an ally, I'm assuming this question is directed at allies, you have the privilege of not being us and automatically having the privilege to say, hey, I don't think that's right, and you don't have to deal with any other systemic injustices, you just have to find it in you to say something. Because racism can get pushed aside and silent, and the oppressed silenced in anywhere, but it happens a lot when there's less of us. And there's often less of us in terms of numbers in smaller towns. We're here, and we matter, but there was maybe like 3 Black kids in my elementary school. There's often less of us. It's important that you speak up when we're not, when we can't speak up for ourselves.
I would say you can always start off with your own family. You live with those people every single day. You know, if there's, let's say, for example, one Black family, your family can be an ally to them. Depending on how many people are in your family, it could be, just you and a parent or a caregiver, or it could be a bunch of people. Just having, that support from another family, that would really, I feel, uplift anyone in the area who may be a minority compared to the rest of the people there. And from that family, you can always expand to their friends, your dad's friends, your mom's sister, your grandpa's buddy. Like, if all you need is like a few people, you don't need that many, and it will eventually spread. And also, like, if you can't get your family, if your family is really, not gonna budge with that sort of thing, you can just ask your friends. Convince your friends. Friends are people who are supposed to be there for you. So if your friends aren't willing to listen to you, then you know what type of people they are. And you can always become friends with, the people in your area. Like the people that I'm talking about, the one family, the one Black family. You can reach out to them. There's nothing wrong with reaching out to people and being kind. So being kind and also calling out racism, just like what Hannah said. Because you can always be kind, you can put on a smile, but at the same time, if people around you are saying all these racist, negative things, that's not going to make a difference. So be kind and call out racism.
And I think the other thing that you can do too is be proactive, right? You don't have to wait till a racist incident happens or till that Black family moves in or that Indigenous family moves in. Be proactive and go to your MPP, go to the mayor and start saying we need to put these type of programs together right now. making sure that, you know, our statements, our mission statements, our vision, everything is on our website saying that we do not condone racism, that we are there for everybody, and we're an inclusive community that allows everybody to feel that they belong, right? And I think that should happen anyways, right? It shouldn't have to happen after the fact. Everything that we should be doing is proactive and not waiting. So again, any questions in the room? No? Okay, well, I guess you guys, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. I also want to thank the counselor, White, for coming out for Ward 1 in Georgina, and for Mayor McQuirk for also attending, and MP Jazik for being in the room. But I also want to thank, first of all, the Granada of Jackson's Point Resort for having us today, for giving us this space. And so thank you so much for that. And again, thank you guys, that was amazing. And you guys, you inspire me every time I listen to you guys. And we will be putting out a feedback form online for anybody that wants to fill out anything. And also, we want to be doing these kind of events more often. So we want to make sure that we want to know what you guys want to hear. Because they're ready, right? As they said, they're here. And they're not going to leave, right? And being able to provide more space for Indigenous youth in solidarity, we're going to be here for you guys, right? So you'll always have a voice, right? So thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.
Social media tagline.
Yes, what's your social media taglines? I'm not a tech
Our group tagline is BYR Youth on Instagram. That's where we post our information. That's where we have links to panels, and that's where we even put the bio to our live stream today. Yeah, thanks to Rachel and Hannah for doing the IG page.
What about the Facebook? Okay. So our Facebook is also Black Youth York Region. So that's where you can find us on Facebook. Join the group. It's a group on Facebook. Sorry, I'm not very Facebook savvy. Unfortunately, I really hope I become more Facebook savvy. But that is us on Facebook. We do post about events coming up. You can always, follow what we're, posting, see what we support, and also support us back.
And our YouTube is BYR Youth as well. Yeah, that's where we post the live streams, and that's where we post our instructional video talking about what we're planning to do in our community. Feel free to join.
I just want to clear that up. It's BYR Youth, but it's BYR space youth. So it's not like by and then OUR. Just want to clear that up.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you all for coming out today. So, thank you.
Yeah.